to another special edition of Talking Books Africa, brought to you by the Rainbow Book Club, project managers of Port Harcourt UNESCO World Book Capital 2014. 10 years ago, Nigeria witnessed the first peaceful handover of power from the incumbent president to the incoming opposition administration. Our guest today is the man who led the country through those times and who wrote about it in his book, My Transition Hours. Please join me in welcoming the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, sir, we are in Abuja today, but just a few days ago, you were in Lagos being awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from this day. On behalf of the Rainbow Book Club, I would like to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
And I would also like to take your mind to your lifetime thus far. A few years ago, when you were delivering a speech in South Africa, you spoke about how in 2006, the former president of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, visited you in Bayelsa State. You were governor at the time. And you said that he predicted that you would be president of Nigeria one day.
Yes.
What did you think of that, and what did you think as you saw it playing out before your eyes?
Kenneth Kaunda visited us because we had a program to mark the issue of HIV. So at that time, 2006, there was a significant discrimination against people living with HIV. And when I took over as the governor of Bayelsa State, I announced that nobody will die from HIV if you cooperate with us. We'll provide the relevant drugs. And I got the information that even if you take the drugs, you don't feel well, that the drugs don't work very well. So I started paying some stipends. Initially, I wanted a contractor to supply me milk and other things, but I feel that that will go into a different set of arrangement and there could be leakages. So I rather pay the money directly to the beneficiaries. And we had a program that wanted to make sure that we mix, even as a governor, my wife and others, mix with the young people that were positive so that people will not discriminate against them. So we invited Kenneth Kaunda as a guest of honor. The Senate President then, Kenneth Namani, was also in the state. We had what we call the Three Arms Road Walk, where we had executive, the parliament, and the judiciary. That was the program that brought Kenneth Kaunda. So we spent about 3 days with us in Yenagua. And when we were taking him back to Port Harcourt International Airport, when we were in the VIP lounge waiting, in fact, when they announced that the flight was ready, when he was to go on board, as he rose up, and all of us, myself and my Secretary of Government, Ambassador Godness Igali, stood up to take him. I turned around and said, young man, one day you'll become the president of this country. To me and my my Secretary of Government, then we just laughed because we didn't take it serious. Because literally I saw myself as the deputy governor then. You know, I was a deputy governor. I just took over from my principal because of some issues. It was not quite 6 months into that. And so I couldn't even imagine becoming the president. The highest thing I was thinking is after serving as a governor, probably I will come to the national as a senator. And from Senate, go to private life. Not presidency. It was not in my thinking completely. But when I became a vice president, which also was not my thinking, it was accidental. I would say so because it was not my plan to do so. It was the party leaders that pleaded with me, even when I rejected, pleaded with me to accept it. And of course, when my principal took ill, through doctrinal necessity, I started acting. I'm beginning to move closer to becoming a president. So sometimes the prediction of late Kenneth Kaunda now sometimes reflect through my brain. I said, what this senior citizen said probably may happen one day. But at the time he said it, I didn't take it serious.
You just laughed it off.
We just laughed over it.
And you know, you've noted that you've reached the highest political office in Nigeria unintentionally, not by contesting, because of course of the death of the late Yaradua. In your book, you mentioned that you took over leadership whilst the country was in a complex position. So, sir, I was hoping that you could share some insights with us and perhaps even some advice on how to lead through shaky times such as that.
Yes, Nigeria, we have a complex situation. There's always balancing between North and South, Muslims and Christians. And Yaradua was a Northern Muslim, who was the president. And he took over from a Southern Christian, Obasanjo, who ruled for 8 years. So definitely the Northern Muslims wanted Yaradua to at least do 8 years before he could come back to the South for another, probably a Christian, to take over. But well, the health issue came up, and it was the problem. And that is why even to allow me to act was an issue. When Yaradua was going for the medical checkup, actually a letter was written. Of course, the Constitution says that for the Vice President to act, the President will send a letter to the Senate and the House of Rep, informing them. That letter was written, but the person who the letter was handed over to, I will not mention the name to you now, was one of the aides of Yaradua, refused to submit the letter to the National Assembly. And Yaradua became so ill that he had no control of issues. So we had the country where the president was not available and there was no acting president. Yes, as a vice president, you can take over the responsibilities of some responsibilities of the president. You know, the president of Nigeria has two main responsibilities. First, you're the chief executive of the country, so like a prime minister of a country. That the vice president can assume it. You don't need any transfer. And I was doing that because we're having an executive council meeting, we're approving memos from ministers, so the government was going on. But there was no commander-in-chief, which is the second responsibility of the president of Nigeria, besides being the executive head of the country. And there's nothing like acting commander-in-chief. Either you're a commander-in-chief or not. But when you become an acting president, you are at the same time a commander-in-chief. So that was lacking, and no country allows that gap. A country like America, they don't allow that gap at all. Yes. If American president wants to, even if it's a Whitlow, that he require anesthesia, that he will be off for 5 minutes, he will hand over to the vice president. Yes. Before that procedure. Immediately he regained consciousness to take over. But we stayed for some time. And that led to what they call the doctrine of necessity. When the National Assembly felt that the country was in a situation where it was not expected, they now have to initiate this doctrine of necessity, and they now made me to act as the president without the letter from Yaradua. So the country was tense. Yes. And under this North-South divide, Christian-Muslim divide, it was really tense. And every day I was hearing about coup. I remember one day, I will not mention the names of some of my friends, came to look, Vice President, that time I was not even acting. They have not even moved the doctrine of necessity. I was still the Vice President. No, you don't have to sleep here. You have to come and sleep in my guest house, and so on. I said, no, I will stay in the State House. If anybody wants to kill me, it's better you kill me in the State House, so the Nigerians will know that they assassinated me in the State House. They know I have not committed any offense. It's better that I die here in the State House than being assassinated outside the State House, because all kinds of stories will come up. So that was how tense it was. And to me, I was not bothered. Really, I was not bothered. And I was very calm. But that was the scenario.
So calmness under pressure is...
Yes, in fact, like here, so maybe my suggestion to people, we were able to navigate through that complex situation because I was very calm and I was not ambitious. If I had shown ambition to take over from Yaradua, I couldn't have gotten the sympathy I had from Nigerians, and the problem would have been difficult. But when everybody saw that I was not really interested, I was just doing my job as the vice president. The National Assembly on their own, I did not lobby. I did not meet any member of the National Assembly. I didn't even talk to the Senate President or the Speaker of the House of Rep to talk about the issue of doctrine of necessity. On their own, they felt that the country was wobbling because there was no commander-in-chief. And they did that. But if I had shown an ambition to take over, definitely I would have gone through the National Assembly. Or I would have set up what they call the medical team, the executive. Because these are the two ways you can, vice president can take over. If they have seen that level of ambition in me, the sympathy I had, I couldn't have, and probably something different would have happened. So that's why I always tell people that we should all be ambitious, but moderate ambition in society.
Yes.
You must moderate your ambition. Not because of ambition you overdo things. If you try that, you will now kind of initiate anger from the people who ordinarily wouldn't have been angry with you. So that is key. Calmness, not too ambitious.
Moderation.
Moderation of ambition.
I'm
that helped me to navigate through that complex situation.
So this was in 2010, and then the following year was slated for the next presidential elections. And you mentioned when you spoke that there is this tension between, the North and the South, Muslim versus Christian in Nigeria. Of course, there's also a bit of tension between the ethnic groups, the three majority ethnic groups, and then the other minority ethnic groups. And you mentioned in your book that when you were contesting in 2011, some people felt you were from the wrong parts of the country, to quote you. Yet despite that you contested, you won.
Basically from the South zone, or the Niger Delta, I am the first and only, and of course, from a minority ethnic group. So, the kind of politics our forefathers played from the 50s, I cannot say from 1914 when Nigeria was amalgamated, because the books you read don't give you a clear perspective of how Nigeria was amalgamated. It was done by the British people. The key actors from Nigeria that participated in that amalgamation, you'd hardly hear what they say. But the key political actors, people like Nnamdi Azikiwe, people like Obafemi Awolowo, people like the Sarana of Sokoto, and so on. All these people were less than 10 years old at the time of amalgamation. They didn't play any role. But in the 50s, when we were marching towards independence, that was when these people came to play a key role that led to the independence in 1960. Political parties were formed in the late 50s, leading to the independence. And the kind of politics our forefathers played that time is still the politics we play today. We play tribal and regional politics. And it is quite unfortunate. If you compare Nigeria to other African countries, you really see that you find it difficult to say that this was a national leader in Nigeria that attempted to bring the country together. If you go to a country like Tanzania, I use Tanzania as an example because the Muslim Christian population in Tanzania is almost like 50-50. The mainland, like Nigeria, the mainland is maybe Christian, maybe slightly more. But if you add Zanzibar, which is a semi-autonomous part of Tanzania, it's like 90-something% Muslim. So when you bring Zanzibar, and so it's like 50-50. But everybody talks about Julius Nyerere. So Julius Nyerere saw the whole country as his own. And what he did was to advocate for one-party state then. And he said that they have this Christian-Muslim divide. It's multicultural. There are quite a number of tribes, maybe not as many as Nigeria. But he felt that if we go to multi-parties, these political parties will toe ethnic lines or religious lines and will create division in the country. So he advocated for one party. All of us will belong to one party first before we struggle for the offices. Another thing he did was to promote a language that all Tanzanians will speak, Swahili. Luckily, they have Swahili as one of the... And Swahili within Tanzania is a minority language in terms of the tribes that speak Swahili. Okay. But it's a pan-East African language. So many countries have people that speak Swahili. So he promoted Swahili. He didn't even take the majority, a language that was spoken by the majority tribes within Tanzania, and promoted that in their primary school, secondary school. They have the literature, all the subjects were written in Swahili. And it was, so everybody now begins to speak Swahili. And language can bring people together. Common language is a major instrument in bringing people together. Language and religion. These are two things that can bring people together. So when he did that, up to this time, Tanzanian politics is not based on Christian Muslim, not based on tribes. It's based on ideology and what you stand for. But Nigeria today, we are divided along tribal lines, we are divided along religious lines, and it worries me. And if we don't make any changes, which is difficult to make, it may continue even to your grandchildren, because we started wrongly. And there's no real effort to make sure we change. And it's a major problem. And most of our problems we're having today in the country is because of this division.
Yes, and you know, even here on Talking Books Africa, this has been a recurring theme that has come up. A few months ago, we spoke to Chief Emeka Anyoko on his book, and he also discussed the plurality within Nigeria and how it's essential that we as a nation find a way to, I wouldn't say deal with it, but to live in harmony, work together. We spoke to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. He said the same thing. We're speaking to you now, the same thing. So it almost seems like a warning to Nigeria in this time that we really need to learn to move beyond the tribalism, move beyond religious affiliation, and try to see ourselves as one people. So, sir, you've mentioned things continuing past my generation. What advice would you give to young people in Nigeria today on how we can be active participants in sort of moving behind those lines that divide us?
I say it for young people who should know that this issue of tribe and religion, these are the major setbacks for this country. This makes people, it's create problems for leadership recruitment. If somebody is holding a political office and he wants to give appointments, you begin to see that even if Mrs. A knows the issue better than Mrs. B, and if Mrs. B is from his own tribe, he will want to use Mrs. B. It's like saying, oh, you have a fight that you need a lion to fight, but that lion is not from your tribe. Then you say the cats. Then you say, after all, both of them are carnivorous animals. They have carnal-teeth. And you bring a cat to do the job of a lion. It's not possible. The cat, yes, is a carnivorous animal. Yes, it has carnal-teeth. But the cat cannot do the job of a lion or a tiger or a leopard. So, but that is what happens in a system where people tend towards their tribe. And that's one of the banes of Nigerian politics. The leadership recruitment process is skewed along tribal interests, along religious interests. So you see how difficult it is to get the best. If people are contesting election, even as a president of a country or as a governor in the various states, I wouldn't want to mention states. There are some states that if you come from some part of the state, you can never be the governor of the state, even if you are the best material at the time. In Nigeria, if you want to contest election, they first know, is it our turn? Is it their turn? If it is it the turn of the Muslims? Is it the turn of the Christians? So this creates problem to recruit the best material, because you are not assessing the person you want to recruit to the leadership position based on competence. You assess the person based on how he worships his God, or from the part of the map of the country the person comes from.
Something they can't even control.
So these are the issues. So for young people like you and those who will come after you, it's not something you can do overnight. It's difficult because the elders will continue to be pushing you back. But just like the young people came together and come up with the concept of not too young to run. Before that time, when we came in 1999, for you to contest deputy governor, governor, senator, vice president, president, you must be 40 years and above. The not too young to run now brought it to 35 years. For you to be that, and that's for the president. In fact, for the governor, they have even brought it to 30, not even 35. But for president, they make it 35. But at the age of 30 now, you can become the governor of your state. Ordinarily, we're supposed not to me, it's supposed not to put age barrier. Because if you remember when, Gowan, because you're a reader, so you should know Gowan. When Gowan became head of state, he was 33 years old. Then your governor, now King D.H.S. Piv, he was Commander A.P. D.H.S. Piv, then he was 28 years old. When he became the military governor of the old River State, present River State and Bayelsa State. And he did very well. I don't think we have gotten a governor that performed better than Piv at the age of 28. So I don't believe in all these barriers. You should assess people based on their competence, not how many years you've been sleeping on earth. Somebody can sleep for 40 years and knows nothing. Another person of 25 years could even be more knowledgeable and more competent to manage society. But the key thing is, if the younger people can begin to gradually downplay the issue of religion and religion in the politics of Nigeria, the leadership recruitment process will improve. We'll begin to recruit people better. When I was contesting 2015 because of this religious divide between me and Buhari, I used to tell people that, look, if you are sick, let us say you have a kidney problem and you go to the hospital, you ask for the best doctor. Yes. You will not ask whether that doctor is from Enugu or from Kano or from Ibadan, if it is in Nigeria, but you ask. If they say this is the best doctor, you are comfortable with. When you're hungry, you don't care where the person who's serving the food is from Meduguri or from Yenagua. You eat the food. That is normal human. But whenever it comes to a leadership recruitment process through the political recruitment programs of election and so on and so forth, our wisdom is masked by these sentiments of region and religion.
So after hearing you talk, I feel inspired. Maybe within a few years, I too can contest for office.
No. At the age of 30, presently.
Watch out for me.
We will encourage you.
Thank you, sir. But you also, brought up the 2015 elections, and just a few days ago, March 31st, marked exactly 10 years since you picked up that phone and you made that historic phone call to Buhari. I would say that phone call is the linchpin of this book. It's the event on which everything else sort of surrounds. And you describe what happened and what was going through your mind in chapter 8 of your book. But I still want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Please, sir, could you just tell us in the hours, in the minutes, in the moments leading up to that phone call, what were you thinking?
Like as I said in the book, it's not supposed to be a biography, but I wanted to explain circumstances around the election. The initial title of the book would have been My Last Hours in Office or something. But I felt that if you do that, I will limit it. Because during the period when I was the president, there are certain things that were negative that affected the government. There were certain things that were also positive that promoted the government. And I felt that if you are writing something, it's good to bring some of this, like the issue of Chibo girls. Yes. So we have to reflect it, like the issue of deregulation of the petroleum products that almost for the country was shut down for just about 2 weeks or so. Those are key things that I need to mention because people want to ask those questions. And of course, the things we do for young people, like the UWIN program, the Agropreneur program, that really help to promote young people, the Presidential Special Scholarship for Innovation and Development, and so on. So there were a few positive things we did that we also needed to capture so that people can have an idea about what happened in government. So we changed it to transitional hours. So expanded it a little more. But if you ask specifically why I made that phone call, it was an interesting period. When elections are coming up, as a president, I have security reports very regularly. Sometimes heads of security agencies will even come to brief you even before they send in the report. So, and elections are a period where the country is tense. So you have an idea about what was going on in the country. Most people don't really know in details the issues surrounding what you know, because you are sitting president. And I knew that there was significant external interest in the Nigerian elections. Maybe because some Americans this group of Americans that predicted that Nigeria was going to disintegrate within that period. So whether people were working to ensure that their prediction manifests, I don't know. But there was a significant show of interest. American
Secretary of State?
Secretary of State don't visit the country at the eve of elections, traditionally, because they want to keep away, even if they're interested, they don't want to be seen as directly manipulating the electoral process. But before the elections, America, the State House, sent for some northern governors to have a meeting in the US to discuss the Nigerian election. And of course, Nigerian election, you have North and South divide, Christian-Muslim divide. They invited the northern governors that are Muslims. The Christians were not invited to the US. And the Secretary of State came directly into the country to have various meetings. I don't see as a president of Nigeria for me to engage with America for a fight. It was not going to be necessary. It will affect my citizens and so on. So, but we saw the significant external interest, and you saw what was happening in the country. I wouldn't want to go further than this. Maybe when I publish my biography, I'll go a little more than this. There are certain things that were happening. So, from when I was to vote, you bring technology to help the voting process. The card readers were introduced by the INEC. That because myself, my wife, and my mother used to vote in the same polling booth.
You said so in your book.
Yes. The card reader rejected me as a sitting president. So I was not to vote. Rejected my wife and rejected my mother. The country was tense. Even at that point, I could have even stopped the elections. So something is wrong. And I won't go further. What happened in southern Nigeria was different from what was happening in the north. Because the card reader rejected so many voters in the south, and so many people were frustrated and went back home. Meanwhile, in the north, the instruction was given. So they jettisoned the card readers and they were voting. The same INEC officials in the south were insisting that it must be accredited by the card reader. All these things came up much later. So you really see something not quite right. So from that time, of course, you'll be getting security reports, you know what was happening. And when the results started coming in, of course, you will know the results long time before it will be announced, even before it will be brought to the center for that you already know. And that is why these days, even the last election in Ghana, the vice president congratulated Mahama, even before, because you know their results and so on. So you knew where they were going. And I know that the country was tense. I know, maybe because of the statements made by Buhari himself when he said both the baboon and the dog will be soaked in blood. So young people were kind of mobilized to the level of frenzy to cause maximum violence if people don't get what they want. People were announcing, okay, they will run a parallel government and so on. But those doesn't bother me. But since I was the president of the country, and I also know that even in the Niger Delta, people were also ready to fight back, even though there are not many. But I know they could cause maximum damage, because if the Niger Delta people are going to fight, instead of fight, they will not fight human beings, they will fight oil installations. And it will cause maximum damage to the country, which I don't think it was. So from within that period, a lot of things were going through my head. They process so many things per second. And until you're into that kind of a situation, then you know how many things get through your brain every second. And I reflected back. As a president, I worked with a very strong economic team. People like Ngozi, who was the finance minister and the coordinating minister of the economy, Aganga, who was the trade and investment minister, the Dr. who was doing very well in agriculture. So we have done very well. We encourage people to come and invest in the country. And Nigeria was the number one country for foreign direct investment in Africa then. And our economy was. So when I have encouraged people, in most cases when Aganga make arrangements, when we travel, I used to address investors before I hand over to him. So my face was seen as the face driving the economy of the country. And I looked through that. If we have maximum crisis, all these people that have encouraged to come and invest in Nigeria, they will lose their money and so on. Besides the fact that people will die. In fact, I had in a good authority how so many houses in Abuja would have been burnt if things have gone a particular way. But even if I had won the election genuinely, yes, I had no problem. But since they manipulated the process and they're announcing figures that I was the president of the country, I'm not the one to doubt the results of INEC that appointed the people. So it will look silly for me because I appointed the people. So I said, well, it is my fault. So I will not want the country and investors to suffer. Wow. So the best thing to do was for me to announce the result, not to allow INEC to announce the result. Because if I allow INEC to announce the result, the over-jubilation, they could do havoc to some parts. So while waiting, I announced the results. That was why I made that phone call. It was to announce the result, even though they were still collating. But I said, let me announce the result. And I remember that day in the sitting room, I was there. I know Minister Ngozi was there. Some ministers were there. Some of my aides were there. And people were talking, the way things are going, the different options. Yes. But I was just listening because as the head of state then, I was more interested in the security of the country. I was not too much interested about the fate of Jonathan after the election. That it didn't bother me that much. But how will Nigeria still be peaceful until the next government take over? So I didn't participate in the conversation that much. But people were saying different things. People were saying different things, but I was listening. Then at the time, I just left them. Then I just moved into my study, which is opens to the other part of the city room. I didn't tell anybody. I just stood up, went there. Then I called Buhari. So when I came back, they were still talking. Then I said, gentlemen and young ladies, look, it's over. I've congratulated Buhari.
Wow.
They say, have you congratulated? I said, yes. So the talking should end. So one of my ministers then was there, Chidoka Osita. He was the Minister of Aviation then. And I said, okay, you've congratulated Buhari? I said, yes. So, okay, can I tweet it? I said, okay, go on and So he was the person who tweeted it. So immediately he tweeted it, it went viral.
Wow.
Then, of course, so I announced the result. And it was better for me that I took the responsibility of announcing the result to make sure that nobody should do excessive celebration. So that's what happened, my young lady.
So you said that because this was, so long ago, I might not be getting as fresh a report as what you said in your book. So I would actually like to read a short quote of what you wrote about that moment. This is from page 76. I'm quoting you. I reached for the telephone and placed a call through the State House operators at about 4:45 p.m. A peace I had never felt since my political sojourn descended on me. It showed me where I had been in the past 16 years and where I was then. I smiled at the thought of what I was about to do. And then, of course, you placed the call. So
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, and the quote that you famously made is that your political ambition is not worth the blood of any Nigerian. And you really go extensively in the book to describe your philosophy and sort of your life perspective on peace. And there was a quote from the Bible, from the book of Psalms, about seeking peace that you said has been the cornerstone of your approach. So, sir, I wanted to counter with another quote from the Bible, which I'm sure you're familiar with, from the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, where, it talks about opposites, different seasons, and so on. And
time to plant and a time to reap.
Exactly. Yeah. A time to mourn and a time to dance and so on. And one of the quotes there is a time for peace and a time for war.
Yes.
And so just thinking about that and thinking about your quote, I wanted to know, in a strictly metaphorical and figurative manner, whether you think there's ever a time where we sort of need to actually,
fight
back.
Obviously. I totally agree. So I fought wars not at the national level. Even as a deputy governor, there were some cases we have tension. That I will not tell you some of the things I did now. So, yes, if you advocate for peace and peace and peace, and if it doesn't come, war is also looking for peace. Two countries going to war is politics, actually. Because when two countries get involved in war, at the end of the day, they will go on round table again to resolve it. But war is like extreme, when it becomes so obvious that the peace is not, even husband and wife don't marry the person that you'll be fighting with. Sometimes conversation does not work in the fight. After fighting, people negotiate and they will come together. So definitely, I cannot say that in all cases you must say because you believe in peace. So even if somebody is pummeling you, you say, no, I'm a peaceful man, just beat me until I die. You can't allow that. It never happens in human history. Yeah. But you must first and foremost, as a leader, because if you're a leader that believes in resolving issues peacefully, then what could lead to crisis would be minimal. It cannot be zero, but could be minimal, because you don't believe that war or crisis or confrontation is the best way to solve problems. You must initiate peaceful conversation. Do everything humanly possible for you to resolve this. But at that point, if you cannot get it, well,
so you have to. Any other option?
Yes.
So we've spoken about your time at the national level. I think I would now like us to zoom into the state level. And, the Niger Delta, of course, has come up in our conversation today. So your background, as our audience will well know, you are from Otueke in Bayelsa State. It's in the same local government area as Oloibiri, which is the site where oil was first discovered in commercial quantities in Nigeria back in the 1950s. And that's where my family is from. So when I was young, I always used to go around so proud to tell people they first discovered oil in my village. And it's then sort of unfortunate to see, what has become because of that discovery. And so I wanted to get your perspective, if you recall growing up when this discovery was first made, were there any sort of dreams or aspirations of what oil might mean for the Niger Delta?
When, of course, from the records, the oil exploration started in Nigeria, I think it's 1910 or 1911 or so, when a company that was to explore coal or whatever veered into oil. Then, of course, Shell Diaki came into the current southeastern area in Muanambra. Started exploring in 1930 to 35, started exploring for oil. Then it was Shell Diaki before, was not successful until when they migrated into the Niger Delta. And I think 15 January 1956, that oil was discovered in commercial quantity in Oloibiri, the first oil well that you're talking about. And within that period, I think it's about February or so, oil was also discovered in commercial quantity in somewhere in Ogoni. So sometimes the Ogoni people will even claim that they discover oil in Ogoni before the Oloibiri, but the records are clear. The first commercial oil well, 15 January 1956, was in Oloibiri. But then the volume was small, so they did not export the oil until 1958. 1958 was the first time they exported oil out of Nigeria. So, as we grew up in the area, as at that time, the oil industry does not make much sense to the people then. They didn't even know the value of the oil as at that time. Because basically, society was very rural. Government was very far away, and people were satisfied by what they can get from the river, from the bush. Sometimes we just enjoy, especially as children, we just enjoy seeing the white people coming around, playing in the river, and so on. I remember classically when we were in primary school, there was a day 3 helicopters landed in my village, and 3. Seeing 3 helicopters, one landed. Then I think it has some problems. So they have to bring mechanics and so on to come and set us 2 other ones. So it was like, today. Because every day one helicopter always land from time to time and things like that. So people were just enjoying seeing these yachts and tugboats and others. So, but it doesn't make sense to even the adults, because then most people, society, don't have enlightened people like you then, because most people didn't know what was happening. It was much later people begin to appreciate the effect of the oil. And that is why we couldn't, as at that time, even agitate for a better deal. Because as at that time, if people were aware, like today, people from the Niger Delta, especially that the Ogbia area where oil was first discovered in commercial quantity, would have been big people in Shell. We would have been able to impress on the oil companies to train our young people to become petroleum geologists, petroleum engineers to work. But people didn't even care. People just were interested in being laborers and so on. So even most of the senior people that worked with the oil companies were from either from this present southeast or southwest and so on. That is why they still dominate the oil industry till today, because they still don't give us the chance that we're supposed to. So, but later, the awareness came up, and young people really started revolting, especially the issues of environmental impact of the oil industry, pollution of water, pollution of land, and air pollution. And those things are still there. And I think because of the excessive awareness, since the oil companies didn't start early to look at these things critically, it becomes very difficult for them to manage. So what the oil companies are doing now is to leave out their oil wells that are in land and shallow waters to indigenous, and they move into the deeper water. But that's supposed not to be. There is one, when I was a deputy governor of Bayelsa State, when we visited, I led a team to China because we were trying to see how we can link up with some companies and so on. And there's a city we visited, I think Dashing, I can't remember exactly the pronunciation. They describe it as the oil city in China. And from that visit, it opened my eyes. Oil was discovered in Nigeria, in Oloibiri, 1956. Oil was discovered in China by the same Western companies in 1958. Okay. But so 2 years in Nigeria before China. But as at the time we visited, there was it 2002 or so. Most of the inputs for the oil industry were manufactured in China. While here in Nigeria, even if a valve is to be replaced, that valve, they will go to the parent company. If it is Egypt, they must go to France. They have to go to England if it's Shell or US. So they treated us differently because of the way we look at the oil industry. And the interesting thing about that city, I was calling Dashing, is that within the city there, like as I said, Port Harcourt is an oil city, but you don't see oil wells. But within the city, in front of the offices and in front of the living homes, you see oil wells. And because the pressure from the oil is low, okay. Only immediately you hit the oil, the pressure is so much. So you have to compress it. Yeah. But there, the pressure is low, so it's like water. Okay. So you need a pump to pump out. So you see that on the wells, they install these pumps, and we see these pumps moving this way, and it gives a very nice vista. Initially, when I asked, what is happening? This front of this house, this in front of the offices, you see, say, no, those are the pumps. And you see the grass green everywhere, clean. You don't see a drop of oil anywhere. You only see the pump, pumping the oil. And ordinarily, that should have been the basis of the operations in the Niger Delta. But they started carelessly, and probably they look at the cost implications. And rather, instead of the oil companies to improve on how they will manage the oil processes with minimal spillages, they rather say, okay, you Nigerians take over this side that young people are over disturbing us. Let's move to the deeper waters that we have. No, the communities, women will not come and block road because there's no road to block in the outer ocean. See, that is so big, especially when you ask the evolution of the oil industry. Those of us who grew up within the area, at that beginning, there was a lot of ignorance, yes. Maximum ignorance, and maximum friendship. It was when the awareness came up that these hostilities started, which was much, much later.
And of course, you've spoken about the environmental impact, which you're well versed with. I'm going to read to make sure I quote it, but prior to working in the governor's house in Bayelsa, you were managing environmental issues for the Oil Mineral Producing Areas Development Commission. So I imagine you were at the forefront of sort of a lot of this work. And I remember a few weeks ago seeing in the news that one of the Niger Delta companies was in London suing one of these oil companies for pollution in their region. And like you said, there have been other sorts of ways of sort of pushing back and trying to rise up against some of the side effects that the community has been hit by. But so I want to know from your experience and from what you've seen, what do you think is actually the best way forward for the Niger Delta when it comes to, the environment, the pollution, the impacts that the oil industry has had on the area?
It's a complex question to answer. It's not easy to, because it's like building a house, and the foundation has some weakness, and you want to build a high-rising house. Like you mentioned, I was in Lagos for an award. I was discussing with my friend who owns Marriott Hotel, Dr. Fulabi. I mentioned somebody, I may not want to mention the name, also was building, which hotel brand. And they now have, as they were going up, they noticed that there was a major foundation problem. And this person is a billionaire. So now they think about, okay, he told the technical people who will manage the hotel, okay, let them bring down one floor. People will say no. That means that you have to bring down the whole hotel and start again. Lagos is like the Niger Delta. These are very recent sedimentary rocks. Okay. So for you to build, you must do proper piling and do proper foundation. So the man is helpless. I spent so much money I don't know now how many levels they have reached before they detected a problem. So the oil industry started wrongly. So it's also very difficult for them to fix. But still, they can do a lot. Like you talked about when I was in Umpadeg, I was an assistant director of environmental protection in the Directorate of Environmental Protection and Pollution Control. And we go to some places where pipes burst, not that people tampered with it. The pipes were old. Yes. So ordinarily, most of those old pipes should have been replaced. And with technology now we talked about youths monitoring pipelines. We're supposed to grow above the level where you carry human beings to be monitoring pipelines. Pipelines should be monitored with technology. So anybody who goes close to attempt to either use explosives, dynamite or whatever, or manual, should be picked and arrests should be made. But maybe because of the cost implication, maybe because our regulations are weak. So the company, just like so the companies continue to do the same thing. Just look at the gas flaring. If people from other parts of the world, when they come into Nigeria and see the volume of gas we flare, they feel bad. Why will you be wasting so much energy? Gas. In fact, we know it's an associated gas, but you can scrub the gas and you get the clean gas out. And even use the condensate and refine it to get PMS, kerosene, and others. So people feel like, how will the country be burning their gas? So from day one, if the regulations were okay as at that time, you couldn't allow anybody to flare gas. That means that if you're coming to mine the oil, you have to build that into it. But it was not done, and they already have their oil well scattered. So you place a little fine on it, and they look at the cost of building a plant to gather the gas, and they feel that paying the fine is cheaper for the oil companies. So they continue to pay the fine. So these are the problems. So the starting point was faulty, and who continue to exploit. And if you look at now, we're trying to review the petroleum industry with the new petroleum law and so on, but as at that time. And as at the time those petroleum laws then were drafted, we had no petroleum engineers. How many petroleum engineers we had? How many petroleum lawyers, petroleum economists, petroleum geologists that we had that could even help us really frame laws that will bind the oil companies? I remember what Museveni, the president of Uganda, told me one time, I think when I was in office. He said, at the time Shell came to Uganda and said that, oh, they want to mine oil. They get to know that, yes, they have oil. And they wanted to start mining. I said, I don't want to get into this problem of Nigeria. So I said, okay, they should wait. So I asked them to come back. So he now called the Minister of Education to get all the young people who read physics and chemistry and quickly send them abroad to read different aspects of the petroleum industry. And the young lawyers to go and read petroleum law At least let them have their master degrees in this area.
Yes.
Even if they will not get PhD first, but they have some reasonable knowledge before we talk with these people.
Yes.
That is the problem. So we never had people who knew anything about petroleum.
Yes.
And so a lot of things were done wrongly. So the process of correction is quite challenging.
Yes.
Otherwise, how will the oil companies prefer to pay fine than to do the correcting? That means that the fine was probably 10% of what they will lose if they are to gather the gas. So these are the challenges of the Niger Delta, and that's why we still have these issues till today, these environmental issues till today. But today it is even more complex. Today, most of the environmental problems are not caused by the oil companies, but are caused by our very people who try to take the crude oil and use locally made refinery and refine. And if you go and take crude oil and use a local system to boil the crude oil, the only thing you can get is diesel. So if you get maybe 30% of the volume, we throw the rest out, pour into the creeks, and cause maximum pollution. If you pass some parts of the Niger Delta, you feel sad. It's caused by the people themselves because they want to sell that, because it's only diesel. Because if you crack it to those smaller components, you burn down the place because you will not be able to control because they are very highly volatile. Diesel is not volatile. So that is the level, they crack it to the level of diesel and remove the diesel. It's just about 30% of the crude oil. And you pour the rest away.
So, listening to you talking, I feel like you have your professor hat on, your academia hat, really explaining, and I'm even learning so much from this conversation. Although I think it's unfortunate that, as you mentioned, in Uganda, Nigeria was actually being used as an example of what not to do. But, hopefully it's not too late for us to turn that around. So I would like us to now move a bit past maybe your time in office and talk about your time afterwards. In your book, I believe you were launching the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation at the time, and so you spoke about sort of what the focus was going to be, what you were going to do. And
the day we launched the book was we wanted to use the proceeds of the book to start the foundation. And that's actually what we used to start the foundation. So
I didn't know that.
Yes. So all what was raised, I did not eat one kobo from that. All was used to start the foundation.
So then that makes it 10 or a little less than 10 years rather of your foundation where you've been working towards advocating and even advising on peace, democracy, economic inclusion for youth and for women on the African continent. So I just wanted to ask, for you, what has been the highlight of your work with the foundation or through your foundation, and what do you envision for maybe the next 10 years of the foundation?
Normally, certain things you do, sometimes it's even difficult for you to evaluate and assess whether you're progressing or not. As a foundation for the past 10 years, it's almost 10 years, because we launched the foundation November 10 years ago when we launched this book. We launched it to coincide with my birthday. So my office here to the foundation, they're even planning for a 10-year anniversary program, though I've not seen the detailed plan. So if you ask us the successes, it's difficult to say we have done much, but one thing is that our intervention in elections has been quite encouraging. And probably from what I did as a person, and since I lead the foundation, we try to impress on people that we don't need to kill ourselves over being the presidents of our nation. That a president, if you lose the election as a sitting president, you should be able to leave. If you like, you can come back and recontest if your constitution still allows you. And within this period that we're advocating, we set up the West Africa, the foundation set up what we call the West African Elders Forum. That is all the former presidents from within the West African zone that are no longer interested in politics. If you are still interested in the politics of your country, we don't accept you. because we don't want a situation where the sitting president will have problems with us because you want to take over the office. But those who are no longer, that's why you say I became almost political. They hardly see me at any political meetings. I'm a PDP person, no doubt about that, but I don't go for meetings, BOT meeting, which I am a permanent member of the board of trustees of the party, supposed to attend the NEC meeting, National Executive, but I don't because of the West Africa Elders Forum. Because if I'm attending those meetings, even the other political parties in Nigeria will not have confidence in me. Because even the last election, I know the role we played and to make sure we get. So if you look at what we have done within this period, we've been able to handle things that brought peace to so many countries. And this idea of a sitting president losing election and calling the winner and congratulating too is now becoming it's now an accepted phenomenon. Because I was quite impressed when I was in Botswana, and we had a robust conversation with the president. I said, President Jonathan, well, if I lose the election, why not? I will go.
Wow.
And that was a party that has been in office from independence 58 years ago till, I think what was last year, the last year election. That party has been, but they lost. And they not congratulated, called the person who won the election, congratulated him. And before, the party members will not even accept.
Would have been unheard
Even
of.
Ghana, the last election, the serving vice president lost the election. And he called Mahama and congratulated him. And we were there before the election, we were there during the election, we had robust meetings with them, and so on and so forth. So, which other country? Liberia too, just where? Though he was not very happy. But because of our intervention, and we were on ground, it was difficult for him. He called the man and congratulated him. So we are succeeding. We have not reached where we should reach, but we are succeeding. Yes, our advocacy regarding election processes, credible election, accepting the votes, and so on and so forth. It is percolating down gradually. And I think as the years come by, it should even improve.
And, you know, it's powerful coming from someone who has actually walked the walk,
Yes,
not just
that makes it easier.
Yes.
Because Nigeria is a big country. Every African country south of the Sahara know that Nigeria is a big and powerful country. So if the president of Nigeria can walk away, so why not you?
Wow, what a powerful example, sir. And, you know, one of the objectives of Talking Books Africa is really to reach young people around the world, really, with African stories, both those that are in Africa, those in the diaspora, and those who are simply interested. And so we've spoken today about, you know, some things that young people in Nigeria should be doing differently, some things that need to change, but I would love to hear from you. What do you think is one part of Nigerian culture that the younger people, such as myself, should actually hold on to and we shouldn't let go of?
One thing that you must not let go is being a brother's keeper. We don't have the social welfare system that they have in the Western world. But Nigerians, no matter how the circumstance of your background, you survive. Because you have your aunts, you have your uncles, you have your cousins, you have your nieces, you have your nephews. You always have somebody that, the West should not push us to drop that tradition. Yes. That tradition is good. So many people go to school, to the university, PhD, not from their fathers or mothers, but from their uncles or cousins sometimes. Or sometimes even a distant relation that this young girl is brilliant. She must go to school. And that has been helping us. In fact, when I was in primary school, but for this extended family system, probably I couldn't have gone to school. Because at that time, in my village of Otoke, we had just primary 3. Because they are missionary schools, not government schools. And Anglican church had up to primary 3. For you to do 4, 5, and 6, then you have to go to a central school. And within the Oloibiri group, Oloibiri alone had up to 4, 5, and 6. So I was to go to Oloibiri. And because of that, I missed a year. When I finished the first primary, there was nowhere I could go, and I was still a young person. But the second year, my mother has to go and talk to a family that were, I don't even know the link. It's a family relation. Then the lady agreed. Oh, it's from our family. Okay, come and stay with us. So I have to live with that lady when I did my primary 4. So if we're the typical Western world where you only believe in the micro family, I wouldn't have been who I am today.
Wow.
It is so, this extended family system, so some of the young people like you, school abroad, always feel that, no, it's the best thing for Africans. So we must not drop it.
I've really taken that to heart, sir. Thank you. You know, I always like us to end on a light note, on a fun question. So I would like to ask you, what are some of the things that you enjoy doing for fun? Is there anything in particular that our viewers might be surprised to hear you like to do?
Some I will disappoint you in this in this angle, because some I don't know. I'm somebody who doesn't have to. I don't have hobbies. Probably when I was much younger. Now I'm on the introvert side of the continuum. If you plot the graph, so it is 50. This side extrovert, this side introvert. I am a little on the not extreme. But a little on the introvert side, so I don't even have. But though introverts have hobbies anyway, so I can't say all that. But I love sitting there with friends and talking with friends. I'm not a very sports person. I play squash for exercise and mainly for exercise and also to relax and things like that. But I can't say anything that viewers will be surprised.
Don't worry, sir. After the show, I'll share some of my hobbies with you. Maybe you might like to pick them up.
Okay, but hobbies for a young person like you, I don't think it will fit somebody at my age.
Young at heart, young at heart. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It has been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.